Welcome to Voyage Daily Tech, the most important news personalized for you every day, supported by Voyage.com.
All right, we've got 5 major stories for you today. First up, we're diving into Meta's plan to build a 50,000-kilometer undersea internet cable, a multi-billion-dollar project sparking a quiet coup on the ocean floor and raising fears of a new digital colonialism. Then, we'll look at how Denmark is building one of the world's most powerful quantum computers with Microsoft and the Novo Nordisk Foundation, aiming for 50 logical qubits, a number that could shatter global security. After that, a secretive Wall Street firm, Jane Street, stands accused of a sinister scheme in India. We'll break down how it allegedly raked in billions, while 91% of local investors were losing money. Fourth, Tesla just made it nearly impossible to sue its board, now requiring a $30 billion stake. We'll cover why New York's Thomas DiNapoli is accusing the company of deceiving shareholders. And finally, in a stunning move, OpenAI is turning to its biggest rival Google for cloud power. We'll explain why CEO Sam Altman is making deals with competitors just to keep ChatGPT running. Believe it or not, Meta just announced it's building an undersea internet cable so long it could wrap around the entire planet. The project, called Waterworth, will stretch a staggering 50,000 kilometers, becoming the longest subsea cable system in the world. The reason for this multi-billion-dollar venture? A global arms race for AI dominance. And the economics behind a single company attempting this are fascinating. In the past, a project this massive would need a whole consortium of companies to fund it. But for a giant like Meta, the sheer volume of data they need for their AI models makes owning the infrastructure cheaper in the long run than renting bandwidth. Plus, they can lease any extra capacity, turning them into the new landlords of the internet. But this isn't just about faster speeds. A quiet coup is happening on the ocean floor. The physical backbone of the internet, the unseen superhighways that carry an estimated 95% of all global traffic, was once the domain of telecom giants and state-backed consortiums. This is where the situation takes a more complex turn. The numbers themselves tell a story of a massive and incredibly fast transfer of power. As of 2022, tech companies controlled about 66% of all global submarine fiber capacity. To put that in perspective, back in 2012, that number was just 10%. Not anymore. Over the past decade, Silicon Valley titans Meta, Google, Amazon, and Microsoft have been taking over, laying their own private cables to feed the insatiable appetite of their AI and cloud platforms. Google now has investments in over 30 subsea cables, while Meta is racing to expand its own global network. According to a Google director, conversations around the resilience of this global web are now coming more and more to the forefront, hinting at the immense geopolitical stakes of controlling these critical data arteries. These garden hose-sized cables take 4 years to plan and lay, and are expected to provide service for the next 20 years. What's crucial to understand here is the vulnerability of this system. When they talk about resilience, they're also talking about risk. The fundamental process of laying these cables is almost the same as it was in the 1850s. This 19th century tech is now facing 21st century threats. We've already seen suspicious incidents in the Baltic Sea where cables were damaged, raising alarms about state-sponsored sabotage. While the tech giants frame this as a mission to bring AI to everyone, researchers are already sounding an alarm. Experts from the Oxford Internet Institute point to the growing concentration of digital infrastructure in the hands of just a few private companies. But that's not the whole picture. The real concern here is a new form of digital colonialism. The way these cables are laid out risks creating a scenario where superhighways shuttle data from continents like Africa and South America directly to data centers in the global north for AI training. This could turn entire regions into simple data sources and consumers, rather than allowing them to become hubs of their own AI innovation, reinforcing existing global inequalities. This all begs the question, what happens when the companies that already control your digital life also own the physical pipes that connect the entire world? Speaking of the global arms race for technological dominance, it's not just happening on the ocean floor. A small country is now making a huge play in a completely different arena, quantum computing. A new computer is being built that can solve problems in moments that would take today's systems millions of years. This isn't science fiction. It's happening next year in Denmark. The initiative, called Conorth, is backed by an €80 million investment. Now, a small country like Denmark making this kind of move is actually a massive deal in geopolitics. We're talking about something called quantum sovereignty. In a world dominated by American and Chinese tech giants, building your own world-class quantum computer is a declaration of independence. The Danish government is also investing over 1 billion kroner into a national strategy because it wants to secure its own critical infrastructure and protect its own data rather than relying on another nation's cloud. But here's the surprise. A key investor isn't a typical tech venture fund. It's the Novo Nordisk Foundation, the entity controlling the pharmaceutical giant. They're teaming up with Microsoft and hardware builder Atom Computing to create what they claim will be the world's most powerful quantum computer. However, if you zoom out, you'll see another layer of strategy at play with Microsoft's involvement. The company has its own ambitious and very delayed project to build a specific type of quantum computer. By integrating Atom Computing's hardware into their Azure quantum platform, Microsoft is positioning itself to be the universal operating system for the quantum age, no matter whose hardware ultimately wins the race. Named Magni, after the son of Thor, this machine is being built for one reason: to achieve what's called quantum advantage. The computer will start with 50 logical qubits, and that number is the absolute bombshell. You know, the term logical qubits is where the real magic and the real difficulty lies. A logical qubit isn't just one thing. It's a stable, error-corrected quantum bit made from many less stable physical qubits. Think of it like a team of skittish cats that you've trained to act as a single, reliable guard dog. The overhead is massive. For example, Atom Computing has already entangled 24 logical qubits using 256 physical ones. This whole game is a race to make that error correction more and more efficient. According to Microsoft's Executive Vice President, Jason Zander, 50 is the magic number. He went on the record stating, when we get to about 50 logical qubits, that's when we start hitting true quantum advantage. He defines that as the point where he can run something on a quantum computer that I could not run on a classic computer. The reason this is so critical is that the moment that claim is credibly demonstrated, it changes everything, especially for global security. The incredible power that can solve science's biggest problems is the same power that could theoretically shatter the encryption that protects our bank accounts, government secrets, and private data. It's why cybersecurity agencies are already in a frantic race to develop post-quantum cryptography before it's too late. This is the starting line for a technological revolution. The goal is to revolutionize drug discovery and material science by simulating molecular combinations that are currently impossible to analyze. So, what's the practical application here? Well, the reason the Novo Nordisk Foundation is investing so heavily is that quantum computers can simulate how molecules behave at a true quantum mechanical level, something even the biggest supercomputers can't handle. This allows researchers to model how a potential drug will interact with a protein in the body with perfect accuracy. We're already seeing hints of this. A recent study used a hybrid quantum system to design 2 new molecules targeting the KRAS protein, a major culprit in many cancers. This machine could accelerate that process from years down to days. But the rabbit hole goes deeper. Zander laid out the entire roadmap. He says at 100 logical qubits, they can start solving major science problems. At a couple hundred, they can tackle complex chemistry. And the end game, in his own words, when all the way up to 1,000, now you are solving everything. We were just talking about nations racing to secure their technological future, but sometimes that same high-tech prowess can be turned against the country's own market. A secretive Wall Street trading giant just got accused of running a sinister scheme in one of the world's fastest-growing markets. India's market regulator, SEBI, has banned US-based Jane Street, alleging it manipulated the market to profit at the expense of millions of small investors. To really grasp this story, you need the context of what's been happening in India. There has been an absolute explosion of everyday people, so-called mum-and-pop investors, pouring into the market thanks to easy-to-use trading apps. But here's the catch. A recent study from the regulator itself found that a staggering 91% of these individual investors are losing money, creating a perfect hunting ground for sophisticated players. Here's the alleged playbook. SEBI claims Jane Street used 2 different entities in a coordinated attack. One entity would buy up huge quantities of bank shares to artificially inflate a key market index. At the same time, a second entity would place massive bets that the very same index would crash. Now, get this. This isn't just shrewd trading. It's what regulators call marking the close. It's a deliberate strategy to manipulate the final settlement price of a security or index, which is used to determine the value of trillions of dollars in derivatives contracts. Then, right before the trading day closed, they would allegedly dump all the shares, causing the index to plunge and cashing in on their bets. The regulator called this a scheme that created a false or misleading appearance of market activity, luring unsuspecting investors to trade at artificial prices. The numbers are staggering. While small investors were bleeding money, SEBI says Jane Street raked in an estimated $4.3 billion from India in just over 2 years. One investor told the BBC that on Jane Street's most profitable day, he suffered his worst single-day loss of the year, nearly $7,000. And to give you a sense of their sheer scale, after they were banned, data showed that trading volume in these specific index options dropped by nearly 36%. That's how massive their presence was. Even a rival CEO is weighing in. Alexander Gerko of XTX wrote that while it's not illegal to be smarter than your competition, if you read the allegations, the whole thing appears to stink very badly. Jane Street denies all wrongdoing, calling the trades basic index arbitrage and plans to challenge the ban. Now, this is the critical point. Legitimate index arbitrage is actually a good thing. It's like a market plumber, fixing tiny price differences between an index and its underlying stocks, which makes the market more efficient. But what SEBI is alleging is manipulation. The key difference is intent. Arbitrage exploits natural price gaps, while manipulation creates artificial prices to deceive others. This is a tactic that is heavily scrutinized or outright illegal in the US and Europe, which raises the question of whether firms are using emerging markets as a testing ground for aggressive strategies. But an expert quoted in the report disagrees, saying what they have done is taken a position in two different markets. That is the problem. Now, the firm has over $500 million sitting in a locked account in India, and if the allegations are proven, Jane Street could face a fine up to 3 times its illegal profits. This whole episode really highlights the technological arms race between regulators and these giant quantitative firms, leaving us to wonder if regulators globally are outgunned. From a battle with regulators in India, we now turn to a company that's rewriting its own rules to sidestep legal challenges entirely. So, you want to sue Tesla's board? You might need about $30 billion first. That's not a joke. Tesla just changed its corporate bylaws, requiring any investor to own 3% of the company's stock to file a lawsuit against its leadership. That's a jaw-dropping number that effectively blocks almost everyone. In fact, only 3 institutions on the entire planet currently own enough stock to meet that threshold. This move isn't just about one company, you know? It's part of a larger trend where founder-led tech companies are trying to build what some call a founder-proof fortress around their leadership. The goal is to insulate visionary, but often controversial, leaders from accountability. What really brought this to a head was the lawsuit that started this whole firestorm, the one in Delaware, that voided Musk's $56 billion pay package. That suit was filed by a shareholder who owned just 9 shares. You heard me, 9. So this 3% rule is a direct reaction designed to prevent that from ever happening again. But here's where the story gets explosive. New York state officials are now accusing Tesla of a bait and switch. The charge stems from Tesla's recent move of incorporation from Delaware to Texas. To get shareholders to approve the move, Tesla assured them their rights would remain substantially equivalent. And this is where we get into the weeds of corporate law, but it's fascinating. What we're seeing is a phenomenon called corporate forum shopping. For decades, Delaware was the undisputed king of corporate law. But now, states like Texas are actively competing for that business, recently passing legislation that is incredibly management friendly. So when Tesla promised substantially equivalent rights, they were doing it right before Texas changed the very definition of what those rights were. The plot twist? Almost a year after the move, Texas changed its law to allow for these exact lawsuit restrictions. The very next day, Tesla's board amended its bylaws to the maximum limit. This all traces back to a Delaware judge voiding Elon Musk's historic $56 billion pay package, which prompted the move to Texas in the first place. Now, New York officials who oversee a major state retirement fund are firing back. In a formal letter, they called the move egregious. New York State Comptroller Thomas DiNapoli went even further, stating flatly that Tesla deceived shareholders. New York is demanding Tesla delete the bylaw entirely, calling it a violation of basic corporate governance. But this whole situation presents a fascinating duality. As these traditional legal doors close, new ones might be opening through technology. We're starting to see the rise of tech-enabled countermoves, like crowd-funded legal funds or AI-driven tools that help coordinate millions of retail investor votes. So while the old playbook for holding executives accountable is being shut down, a new tech-powered one might just be getting started. While one tech giant is building walls to keep outsiders away, another is being forced to tear them down and team up with its biggest rival. In a stunning move, OpenAI is turning to Google for cloud power, a seismic shift considering OpenAI's primary backer is Microsoft. So the thing is, this is a classic case of what experts call competition. It's a strategic dance where companies cooperate and compete at the same time. For cloud giants like Google and Microsoft, their cloud divisions need to sell computing power to as many customers as possible, even if those customers are their biggest rivals in another department. Why? Because the AI arms race is so expensive that it fuels the growth of their entire cloud business. So why would Microsoft's golden child turn to its biggest competitor? The simple answer is desperation. OpenAI is facing a massive capacity crunch. The demand for ChatGPT is so extreme that its CEO, Sam Altman, recently posted on X asking if anyone had GPU capacity in 100K chunks they could get immediately. This isn't just about servers being full. After all, we're in the middle of what you could call the geopolitics of compute. There is a global acute shortage of the high-end GPUs needed to train and run these massive AI models. This scarcity is fundamentally reshaping power dynamics in tech. It's forcing AI leaders like OpenAI to forge alliances with anyone and everyone, even their rivals, just to secure enough processing power. This is a resource war, plain and simple. But the story goes deeper than just needing more servers. The relationship between OpenAI and Microsoft has fundamentally changed. Last year, Microsoft officially named OpenAI as a competitor in a corporate filing. That's right, the exclusive partner now sees them as a rival. Microsoft even gave up its status as OpenAI's exclusive cloud provider, now only holding a right of first refusal. Interestingly enough, that right of first refusal is a critical piece of the puzzle. It's a contractual clause that says before OpenAI can accept a deal for computing power from another company, like Google, it first has to go to Microsoft and offer them the chance to match the deal. If Microsoft says no, then OpenAI is free to sign with the competitor. It's Microsoft's way of keeping a hand on the steering wheel without having to be the only driver. This isn't a small move for OpenAI. They're building a network of cloud providers, including a massive 5-year deal with CoreWeave worth nearly $12 billion. And the technical challenge here is immense. Running a service like ChatGPT across 4 different cloud infrastructures, Azure, Google Cloud, Oracle, and CoreWeave is like trying to conduct a single orchestra with 4 different conductors who all use different sheet music. You have to use sophisticated tools to manage all those different systems and ensure the AI model behaves consistently no matter where it's running. For Google, this is a monumental win. Its cloud unit now provides critical infrastructure for the most famous AI product on the planet. Even more, Google also has a cloud deal with Anthropic, a major AI competitor started by former OpenAI executives. This decision brings both benefits and comes with inherent strategic advantages. For one, this diversification isn't just about securing GPUs, it could also be a brilliant antitrust defense. Regulators in the US and Europe are getting very nervous about the cozy relationship between Microsoft and OpenAI. By deliberately partnering with a major rival like Google, OpenAI can walk into a hearing and say, look, we're not tied to one partner. We're fostering competition in the cloud market. It's a savvy move to get ahead of regulatory pressure. It all leads to a critical question. What's the real endgame when the king of AI can no longer rely on its main patron and has to turn to its biggest rival just to keep the lights on?
That's it for today on Voyage Daily Tech. Follow, share, and stay tuned for daily updates coming your way tomorrow.